Yeah.
So I talked to him at like 5 that day, and curfew
Oh
was at
man.
6.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But then I was thinking, like, you're close to Minneapolis.
Hmm.
I mean, you're in Minneapolis, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're in
So
Minneapolis.
I almost wanted to start by just being like, what has it been like to live in Minneapolis this year?
Yeah. I mean, that's
Because I mean,
been,
you have the pandemic, but then you also have been at the height of what has, the protests with George Floyd that obviously expanded way
yeah.
beyond Minneapolis. But
Oh yeah, for sure.
um,
There's a ton to unpack there for sure. I mean, it was, like right, the Memorial Day weekend, and people were already just like trying to get outside because it was nice out and people could be outside, but there's still that like
was the city
co-
shut down because of coronavirus?
yeah,
Like, had it
yeah.
reopened at all?
It had like they were trying to reopen a little bit in the
Okay.
summer. Like like the band I play with, we did like a couple gigs with like masks on, like inside, which
How was
looking back on
that?
it now, like that was like stupid. Like,
Wait, so you weren't singing with a mask on?
oh yeah, oh just
Really?
breathing in the mask, like chewing on cloth. Yeah, it was.
Huh.
But I think no one cared because they're like just wanted to be
Yeah, just
outside.
be out,
They're
sure.
like, I can't really hear what that guy's singing about, but I don't care. Like we're out
Yeah.
of our house and at a restaurant eating. Um,
Huh.
so I think there was still that tension of like, let's be outside, but we still have to kind of get home, and then just all everything exploded as soon as
Yeah.
George Floyd was killed. Um, and I'm sure there are smarter people than I to look back at like what that was to light the powder keg of, like we've just had enough of this going on.
Yeah.
But I think of all places for that to kind of happen, like, passive aggressive Minnesotan, that's like typical description of
Sure.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
It was all aggression. Like the passivity of the people that were passive, but like borderline aggressive, went all
Hmm.
aggressive. And I
Hmm.
think they called on people that had been just silent. I kind of, like especially now, with Martin Luther King Day yesterday, seeing all these quotes and parts of his speeches of the worst part really isn't the evil people doing what they do, it's the good people not doing anything.
Right.
And I think that just reached its boiling point more than anything else. And I think the people that had been actively voicing their opinions and voicing their outrage on, whether they were, black or people of color, about racism, they then turned even more so towards their white counterparts and said, "You have to do something. You can't
Right.
just sit and do nothing, or you have to be willing to say that I'm part of the problem, or be willing to have people say you're part of the problem and be fine with it." And I think that really is
Right.
what sent the city over the edge was enough people said, I can't be okay with this anymore. Um, and for whatever, the fires and stuff that started, I remember it was like the night after, um, George Floyd was dead and things were going kind of funky,
Hmm.
in town. Um, like I had a dream about a campfire, and I was like, wow, this campfire like is really smoky. And it turns out like we live not too far from the third precinct, and that was when the fires had started that night, and it had like infiltrated my dreams because you could smell smoke. I mean, there was ash like in people's yards, like even just a couple blocks further north than us, and that's when it got like it went from surreal to real really quickly of, oh, this is a real thing. And I was taking Tully to my in-laws for the day, and I just happened to drive by the precinct and one of the apartment buildings in the Target that people had like looted and set on fire. And I was like,
Yeah.
my brain hadn't put it together yet that was all connected. I
Hmm.
just thought, wow, that building's on fire. That really sucks because it's a new building.
Mm.
And then like as I was coming back, I saw protesters up on the road and I thought, "Oh, this is all connected to that." And it was really hard not to pay attention, which I think was a good thing,
Yeah.
um, for our community and for, you know, especially white Minnesota, for us to really take a look at what was going on and that it's more than just fires and demolition. It's people just going against a system that was broke anyways. So why follow a system that's never going to honor who you are as a person?
Yeah.
And that was really interesting. That was just to see that. And so as far as our family, like Katie and I spent a lot of time doing a lot of reading and uh, of different books, but also reading of people's posts on
Hmm.
social media, which social media got really tiring for a while because it became work. It became work to listen to people's outcry
Hmm.
and not just scroll past it, but sit in it,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Um, and that's like the best slash worst part of social media is that if you want, you can just scroll on through it
Yeah.
and keep going about your day. And me as a white male, I definitely could have done that, but I have too many friends here that either one were begging me not to in one way, shape, or form, or
Mm.
like there was that voice within me, that just was like, you can't look past this. You have to look deeper in.
I think it's interesting. Like me and you both grew up in a really white place.
What? Oh yeah, totally. Yep.
And I remember, I just remember like, try like I've had some friends come to visit like from Tennessee or from North Carolina, and they'll be like, where, like, is everybody white? Like, where, like, one of my friends was like, even is like, is there any people of color in here? I'm like, not many. I mean, it's really like, I think it's like 96% or something in Winnebago County. And it's
Yeah.
called Winnebago County. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
just.
Right. Right.
So I guess I'm curious, like, since we grew up like in the, relatively same, you know, neighborhood,
Hmm.
like, how has it been? Like, have you been on a journey of like learning about like racial reconciliation, like in church or through your music? Or, I mean, we haven't talked in forever. It's
Yeah.
probably been close to 10 years, just like hard to comprehend.
Yeah. Right.
But I just, because I've kind of been on a journey a little bit, but I think it's so much from me living in Memphis for
Hmm.
7 years, and
Yeah.
like volunteering at the Civil Rights Museum and seeing where Dr. King was assassinated like multiple times, going to that museum, literally just down the road from where I worked for a couple of years. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious how that is all hitting you, or like your journey through all that.
Oh yeah. I mean, to grow up where we grew up in Oshkosh,
Hmm.
that's yeah. The only friends that I had of color were like Hmong and Laotian, and it was just
Yep, that's
because we
right.
played soccer. Like that was
Sure.
really the only reason. And the middle school, Merrill, um, where I went, like there, the neighborhood where most of the Hmong people lived was just right by that school, so they all went there too.
Sure.
Um, but even that was like there was no, there was really no like reason to, like one to think that there was any issue because we just didn't see it. I didn't grow up with people being mistreated for their color, at least that I saw, but I also wasn't
Yeah,
looking
not that
for
we
it.
saw. I
Yeah.
mean, our church had one family of color,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just
Like
wanted
I
to
think
make.
that was
I didn't want
basically it.
to. I didn't want to like overlook somebody, but as far as I know, just one
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. So it was, and I think there wasn't ever an issue there. I think,
Yeah.
growing up with my dad who grew up in Alabama,
Hmm.
I've thought about that a lot of,
Birmingham specifically, right?
yeah, Birmingham, like
Yeah.
just wishing, I wish my dad was alive for a lot of reasons, but that's one in particular of like what's different about right now and what's the same, to hear,
Ooh, that's
because
a
you
good
hear that a
question.
lot, that narrative a lot of, nothing's changed. This isn't different than any other time in our history that there's been like a spike in
Hmm.
um, unrest or um, a sense of injustice when it gets a little bit louder. I hope that this is different than what's been, but that would also be, I'd love to hear from his perspective. Talking with my mom, who grew up in Florida for most of her young life, um, she's she said there's something different about what's going on today, just with the amount of energy. And I think you know there's COVID that's going on too, that I think heightens everything. The political situation that's been
Yeah,
just like
it's
a
crazy,
powder
man.
keg in and of itself.
Yeah.
Um, and then you add just people just not being able to take it anymore, not being able to like, don't gaslight me anymore about the fact that a majority of people aren't racist, or that you know we can't we can't discern truth as well as we used to by reading a newspaper or looking at the news, because everyone takes their shot at trying to paint the history they wish that it was. I mean, even looking at the our history of our country, this is something that's been on my mind a lot. I mean, the way we got to be America was by killing people. Like, we came
Right.
into a land that wasn't our own because we
Right.
wanted freedom, and we took it from someone else so that we could have it. And yeah, that's been really interesting to go through.
So I remember, yeah, Gary came, your dad, came and spoke to my sophomore English class, and it was about what were we reading? I don't remember what book we were reading. It might have been To Kill a Mockingbird. I
Mm.
don't know. But and so he like came and spoke to our class about 1960s Birmingham, and I want to say he had like a black roommate in college. Is that right? I feel like
He
he
very
had
well may have.
some
Yeah.
story about that, and I just remember just being like, who else like has a like their preacher, their pastor, their preacher, their priest, like come to their English class, and like who would sign up to do that?
Yeah,
And
right.
so and he was so well like liked by my friends, which also I think was, it's kind of like having like it literally would have been your dad, coming to your English class, but it kind of felt a little bit like that.
Yeah, yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, oh man, I hope he doesn't embarrass me.
Yeah, like, hey Andy.
So yeah, it's just interesting. Like it would be good to hear what he would say, because I don't remember him like talking about it a lot, but I don't know. At the same time, maybe he did talk about race, but I think that's one of the issues is like how do white evangelical, white Protestant, white ministers deal with this issue, especially in churches with mostly white people that they're teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to know what he would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something I've thought a lot about over the past year, just about a lot of things, whether it's about the political climate,
Oh yeah, that too.
and that idea of like truth, and what is truth and where does it come from, and what really happens when truth is broken and trust is broken. And yeah, I've thought about that a lot too. My mom, I remember I was super young. I think like we were at like Sears in Oshkosh in the old like Park Plaza Mall, and
Yeah.
I saw like those like little like luggage like sets or whatever, and they had those little like golden like luggage locks on them, and I
Hmm.
remember thinking like, "Wow, that's super cool. I want that." And I walked over and I unlocked it, and it just came off, and I was like, "I'm taking it." Right? And I was like 6. And I put it in my pocket, and like I didn't even feel bad about it.
Hmm.
I just sat in the car. And then at one point I just took it out of my pocket and started playing with it. And my mom was like, "What is that?" I was like, "Oh, it's just a lock." She's like, "Where'd you get that?" And like within a second, I was like, "Ah, my buddy Nick gave it to me at school, and I've kept it in my pocket all day, and it's cool, right?" She's like, "Did you steal that?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "Did you steal that?" And, you know my mom. She looked
Mm-mm.
into my soul, and I was like, "Yeah, I stole it." And she like drove us back, and I had to like give it back to the guy and be like, "I stole this off of that piece of luggage." And he was like, "I don't care." But then we got back into the car, and that was the first time my mom talked to me about trust, and it stuck with me because it was this idea of, she said, when you break trust, like you gotta fix it. It's like when someone breaks an arm and you have to put it in a cast, and it takes a long time for it to be built back. And she's like, "That's what you did. You put our trust that you and I have in a cast, and now we got to take time to build it." I was like, "Oh," and that's just kind of stuck with me for a long time. That idea, especially nowadays when it's so hard to find what is the truth, because our normal avenues we've questioned. I mean, even the people that I grew up with, I'll see them post something on Facebook, and my like first thought is like, "Well, that's not true."
Mhm.
Instead of giving them the benefit of the doubt or thinking about the relationship that we have and that we built for years. And granted, people change, of course, but the fact that the first thought wasn't, I wonder why they like what they've seen to believe that. Because it can't just be because they're just like, whatever. I'm just gonna make some crap up and hopefully someone takes me at my word, even though I don't even believe it or whatever. Like people say stuff because they believe stuff, and where do they get that from? And I think we've really started to uh, lose sight of like where truth is and what truth is and what it
Right.
means and what it means to break it. Like it's no longer this sacred thing. It's like when Adam and Eve like ate the fruit, and all of a sudden all the sacredness of the garden for humans and God was just, it's gone.
Hmm.
And it's no longer a thing. And I think trust is like, to take someone at their word is going to be a really tough thing to do for anyone, let alone like politicians or experts in whatever field.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff that I've like read that I think is accurate, and it's one of them is like people would rather have you marry somebody of a different religion than a different political party.
Yeah. Which that's a
That's
huge shift,
that's
at least
weird.
from, yeah, when I grew
I'd
up,
rather
like,
you be like a Muslim Republican, than
right?
I mean, so that's I think that's a shift for sure.
Yeah.
And then like what if we can't agree on what is true in the world. Like
Hmm.
racism, it exists or it doesn't exist. Like global warming, it exists or it doesn't exist. And there's a bunch of other things. But it's like if we can't agree on anything, if it even exists, let
Hmm.
alone if we know how to solve it, because some people, I mean, there's not even a problem. So there's nothing to be solved.
Yeah.
Like I talked to my wife about this, and this is why I get so like negative. But I'm like, how do you heal that? Like
Hmm.
to use your analogy, which is a good analogy, but it's like, well, I don't think the arm's broken. So,
Yeah. Right. As it's just like dangling
so
in the
then,
wind. You're
so
like,
it's like, no, it's broken. No, I don't think
yeah.
it. So, like, where do you? I don't know. Like, I
Yeah. And
just,
yeah, it's like a total restart, right? I mean, like I even think about some of the friends that I grew up going to camp with, at WCYC and then going to York
yeah,
and seeing some of the posts that they have that I disagree with,
sure,
but the fact that I have to choose to remember first the relationship we have, and that's more important than politics. I mean, even looking back at, what Jesus, when he talked to his disciples or people would ask questions about, like taxes and that kind of stuff. And there was
right,
always this sense of separation of, you know, render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's and that kind of thing. There was a respect there of like respect where you are, but also like his whole movement and what he was doing was against what was more important. It was like, yeah, sure, pay taxes, but also don't serve false idols. don't do that. And that's what people were doing. And they were losing sight of the goodness of humanity and people and the goodness of God. And I think being reminded of what that is, and that, since we don't have the physical God to walk in the garden with, what we're left with is each other. And for me, I have to remember to, it's so cliche to say, but to find the God in other people, to find God in my neighbors first. And then if we want to have a conversation about some of that other stuff, we definitely can. But to keep that and that's of course easier said than done.
Have you had success like keeping some of these relationships? Like you talk about people that, hey, I disagree with them politically or religiously or whatever. Have you been able to have positive conversations?
Yeah, some I think, and
Yeah.
it's taken a lot of work. There's been a couple of my elders. Of course, as I get older, like I guess I'm becoming someone's elder too, um, but I'm way
Sure.
better than my elders. But yeah, there's been some of my elders that I grew up with that I've just decided to engage with on a couple things. I think mostly because of the relationship they had with my dad and my mom,
Sure.
that I respect them enough that I think they would respect me enough as well to come with them with honest questions from myself. Um and there were definitely times when I was like, okay, I can't go in with the idea that I'm going to change someone's mind or I'm going to teach someone something, because that's
Yeah.
just not going to happen. But to go in with curiosity of, why you say this, like, tell me, this is what I know of you. um, and try to keep it that. I think that's where I've had the most success, is starting a conversation with, this is what I remember of you. This is what I know of you. Um, and then I hear you say this. I'm trying to reconcile the two. Can you help me do that? And usually that's been a good conversation, even if they say stuff I still don't agree with.
Mhm.
The conversation has still, it's not gone to like, well, agree to disagree. It's more of like, well, I don't agree with that, but I still love you. um, and I love you enough that I think we can fight on these things in such a way that doesn't dismantle relationship, and that I can gain nuggets of wisdom from the other, and hopefully the same. Hopefully we're both speaking in truth enough that we can garnish truth from each other and then walk away. And so I've had a few of those conversations with people, and back and forth with people, where that's been the case. And then there's others where I'm like, I'm too heated. There's no way. I'm like, I'm not
Yeah.
going to engage right now because I will probably bite your face, and that won't be good.
So one of the things like I always get into a little bit with this idea of like winter faith. So like
Hmm.
growing up in Wisconsin, I know what it's like to like be cold,
Hmm.
and I know what it's like to like, just have winter like 10 months out of the year.
Right.
And so this idea of like winter, and I got it from a different, another book or professor, but I just ran with this idea of like, sometimes I feel like God is really like cold and distant. And that's how my faith feels
Hmm.
sometimes. And it can be, like I've heard it described, like it can be like an emotional kind of doubt, like you're just going through a lot, or it can be maybe like something like philosophical or theological, like you're thinking your way out of faith maybe a little bit. And I'm always like, when people are like, oh, I don't want to go to church, or I feel so distant, I'm always like, man, it's a great place to be. Like, I can't wait to
Yeah.
see what you do with this.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you feel like you've had winter faith kind of experiences or desert periods, and like what that was like. I know we're kind of changing the subject a little bit, but like
No, that's cool.
what those periods are like for you, like specifically what they were, or just describe
Yeah, for
what you
sure.
learned.
I think, since I've lived in Minnesota, like, to put it in a nutshell, like when I initially moved to Minnesota, I was married to my first wife. I was a youth minister, youth pastor, and like working for a church and starting to see kind of behind the scenes of what it can be to work at a church. Some of it good, some of it not great at all. And really being kind of spit out by a church with the best of intentions. But of course, there's that whole phrase of like, there's a road to somewhere that's laid with good intentions. And like having that be the case, like I felt that sense of like, oh, I'm in this place that I'm just getting to know, and I hate church all of a sudden, which had never been a thing in my life.
Yeah.
And I started going to Solomon's Porch eventually, and there was just a lot of things that were familiar about it. It was just we were just reading scripture, and the way that they did communion was like super. Um, it reminded me a lot of like the midnight communion service at WCYC,
Yeah.
um, where you're breaking bread, but you're not stationary. You're moving kind of among people, and that's kind of how they did it. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is interesting. And their view of scripture too was, at the onset anyways, was very like, this is God's word, but what does that mean? Like, how is that applicable? And we were like, my first Sunday there, they were going through the book of Joshua, and it was about the time when God's people split, and there was one half that were going to stay on one side of the river, the other half were going to go on the other side of the river, but they were also going to raise, these two monuments as a witness of, hey, even though we're doing things a little bit differently, we come from the same place and we worship the same God. And and that really struck me, of even looking at church now is different, I think, than what it was when we grew up. And we're probably both at different churches or different spots. And I think that was the beginning for me of like kind of the idea of winter faith. It was looking at scripture differently, and looking at um, the impact of God's word and love on people, and the fact that it can manifest in so many different ways depending on the person, depending on their interpretation. That God's love can be a sword, or God's love can be a shield, or God's love can be a set of open arms, which has been something that's just kind of stuck with me for a while. We've been reading with our 5-year old the Chronicles of Narnia for the first time for her. And so we just got done with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I had forgotten the way that C.S. Lewis describes Aslan, when the children first see him, where they're like, it's a lion and he's huge. And they're like, when they talked about him before they met him, something came alive in their spirit. And then they met him and they were like freaked out. They're like, I'm not sure if I want to pet him or run away, because I'm not sure if he's going to nuzzle me or bite my face off. And I feel like he has right to do both. And I think there's a piece of God for me that I've forgotten about that. I've forgotten that the might of God, and that he's not someone to take lightly. He's not a being to just say, you know, take him or leave him. I'll take the good stuff and not the bad stuff. Or, that I'm starting to maybe understand what some of my elders used to talk about when they say the fear of God,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not necessarily like the fear of like him or the being of God, but more of just being fully appreciative of, if I follow this set of guidelines and rules and laws and love of human beings, if I follow God's law, I should be a little bit afraid of what it's going to mean,
Yeah.
and to not lose sight of that. And I think sometimes for me, when I lose sight of that, that's some of the colder pieces too. Because if you walk away from it far enough, you realize like, oh, I'm also walking away from all the warm cuddles from the lion, as well as the rage and the anger, and also the death too of some of the things that cause, reading through the Old Testament and stuff, that still there's a mighty God there as well. But also realizing that might isn't just in the violence, it's also in the love and the adoration that God has for us. Um, and I think right now like that's where I'm at. I think in that sense of faith and the cold pieces of loving the cold,
Yeah.
because it's, you know, the cold just, it means that there's an absence of warmth, but it doesn't mean that the warmth is gone. It just means that you got to go find it. And I don't
Yeah.
know, there's
Like,
a line from a John Foreman song. Shoot, now I forget what the song is. But the line is, the shadows prove that there's sunlight. Like, to be in the
ooh, that's
shadow,
good.
like you can look at it and be like, oh, I'm in the shadow. Like, this is not a great thing. But to remember that the only reason why there's a shadow is because there's light first. And usually because there's light either on the other side or above it that's there. And I think the same kind of with warmth, that even there's that cold. It doesn't mean that warmth doesn't exist anymore. It just
Right.
means you got to go find it.
And I think it's important to like have that, like, like it's important to have that coldness, that big. I just feel like there's so much that we can learn from the periods of like darkness, and like when you're going through it, it's terrible.
Hmm.
But I mean, I think we're both fortunate enough to kind of like come out of it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, what do you think, like, when you're in that dark period, what has brought you out of it? Or um,
Yeah. I think, probably one of the darkest times I was in was, you and I had some good overlap in time. I mean, we lived at the
yeah, we
same
did.
place,
Yeah, we
at
really did.
the Algoma house in Oshkosh with the his house. And um I think
Yeah,
what
we
got
were
me
we were next door neighbors. We
yeah,
literally had
yeah,
rooms
yeah,
next to each
like
other.
knock on the wall and be like,
That
hey,
was, yeah.
what's up?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. um and I think in that time, what got me through was us just honesty, really. I mean, it was a
Okay.
sense of being honest with myself and with the people around me, of like, hey, I need to reconcile what's truth in my life and what isn't, and reconcile the hurt that's caused me and the people around me. I remember I was going to a couple counselors because I had lots of problems. And one of the counselors I went to um, gave me an assignment. And I think this was maybe a year and a half into my time back in Oshkosh. And the assignment was, they gave me a notepad and said, write down every lie that you can remember that you've told. And immediately my question was, what if I can't remember? And they looked me straight in the face and they said, you can remember. And they were dead right. I mean, I was
Yeah.
just like, I sat down and just started writing when I got home, and it was abysmal. And so I
Like
wrote
lies
down,
that you tell
hey,
yourself, or like lies that you.
everything, lies that I have
Okay,
told
everything.
myself. Like, so there was kind of two lists. There was the lies that I told myself, which are like,
Okay.
we'll deal with those separately. And then there's um, the lies that I've told other people.
Okay.
And it was just pages of lies. And they went back really far. And then I remember going back the next week and I was like, cool, I did it. That was horrible. He's like, just wait. Because now you got to share them with someone. And I was like, shut up. I'm done. I'm done with counseling. I'm well. I'm fixed. I think we're good here. Sons of Thunder. Uh, and at that time, I was so scared to do that. But I was like, well, I'm going to share them with my dad. So I shared them with my dad. I said,
Mhm.
hey, so this is the thing I told you I had done last week. I wrote all these down. And you can say no because you're in some of these. It's like, would you read these? And he was like, yes, I will. and he read through them, and we didn't talk for a few days. Uh,
Mm.
I mean, we did, but it wasn't like a let's talk about that. We just sort
Right,
of
right, right, sure.
talked about what our day was, and then that was it. Um, and I think that exercise was a really tough one to do because it was something that I just didn't want to do, to lay everything out on the floor. But it was also like I was in a house that was burning and I'm the one who set the fire, and it just needed to burn all the way down. And that was that last like bit of like oxygen on the fire to make sure that everything burned down to the ground to where the foundation was, and then rebuild from there. And of course my dad was like a lovely human about it, but he was also, I think, because I was his son too, he didn't let me get away with anything. He was like, some of these are, I had no idea. Some of them I pretty much guessed, but I take no pleasure in being like, hey, I was right. um, but he's like, okay, so now what? I was like, I don't know. And he said, cool, you've written these down, burn it. Just burn it because you're never going to forget them. And if you really care, you're never going to do those things again. So I think that propelled me on to looking at myself in a more honest way, and to be honest with when I feel like I was going down another path of being self-indulgent or selfish or losing sight really of the God in other people.
Mm.
It became a little bit easier as time went on to see that, and also to know the consequence of that action. Um, and not that I've done it perfectly since, but it's, I don't think without kind of that idea of honesty that I would have really been able to move forward to build something better, in my life and the life of people around me. And I remember right right before I got married, um, and we were waiting on Katie or something, and that sounds bad, like waiting on the bride. That was, I mean, we're waiting for everything to get set. It wasn't just her. Um, but I took a moment and I quick ran up to where my mom and dad were sitting with like that conversation and many others in my mind, and it just knowing like I and I told them I wouldn't be here if you guys haven't wouldn't have loved me the way that you did, and like allowed me to burn the way that you did, but then stayed. And I think that's another important piece, is that I had people in my life that weren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And that was one of the lies that I told myself, that if
Right.
I admit to these things, admit that my arm is broken, admit that I've done these things to other people, that everyone's going to leave. And some people
Sure.
did. Um, but the ones that did stay, they didn't just they weren't passive people. They were active people in my life that loved me hard to propel me to something better, to
Mm.
for myself and for the people around me, which I think is another important piece, to have those people that are gonna not just say like, "Oh, you're fine. Everything's fine. It's cool," but to like also say, "No, that really was pretty crappy.
Right.
Um, yeah, you're right. You're right to feel bad about that. Don't do that anymore."
I mean, just I guess applying it to myself, like I just think that, yeah, I mean, there's times when, like in my marriage, we just celebrated 3 years, and like there's been times that I've like really hurt my wife, and it's pretty awful.
Mhm.
And it's just like an awful feeling. And to your point about true people, like, she's still around, I'm still around, but also like, um yeah, like they let you like good people let you know when you've really hurt them, and then they stay around. And
Yeah.
I think for me and you and so many people, like that shame and guilt and those lies in our head, we just think people are not going to stay around because we've maybe never been taught it, or we
Yeah.
just, I don't know, for whatever reason, we have a lot of self doubt. But
Mhm.
then when people start to hang around, then you're like, oh, I think that's like what love is. Like
Yeah.
like I think it clicks a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that, I mean, it's that sense of like, that's how you know, you have like a real love when people in one single breath can say, man, you really suck sometimes. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah,
And please, like, be better. Or they ask, like, what can I do to
right.
help you? You know, and I think that's a big piece too of, and I think another piece of that, like some of the lies that I at least told myself, and you know, maybe it's similar with the idea of, you know, lack of confidence in ourselves or what we bring to a relationship or bring to the table,
Yeah,
is that when we do make a mistake, it's okay if someone gets pissed about it.
yeah. To
And
be
I
okay
was,
with people being angry. Yeah,
yeah, because
yeah,
I would like manipulate a situation so badly because I didn't want them to be mad.
right.
And there were
Yes.
definitely times when I was able to work it in such a way where if they did get mad, they felt bad about it. They're like, how crappy is that? Like that I did something horrible and then made the other person feel bad about feeling mad about it. Like,
Hmm.
oh, there is a special place in the burning house
So
for that.
this, I don't know why this. Well, I guess I know why this memory comes to my head. But when I first started at Starbucks with you,
Mhm.
um, I never worked anything other than at like a Bible store. Never done retail before. And I was working with Connor. Like this is like way early on, working with Connor, and I was the person that was supposed to set the drink down in the right spot to go out to the drive-through,
Oh
and
yeah.
he was on the headset, or no, he was making drinks, and then somebody else was on the headset, and all I had to do was like take the drink he made and put it in the right spot, and I like did it wrong. If you get one wrong, then you get like four wrong,
Yeah, right.
and he just got so mad at me for like and I remember in my head like I have a master's degree, like why is
Yeah,
this so
right.
I'm so stupid. And then like I don't know, maybe like a year later Connor was like, man, Andrew, I thought you were just gonna be horrible at this job forever, but somehow you've turned it around. It was
Yeah.
just, I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
He was so mad at me. It was a
yeah,
great
speaking of
moment.
Starbucks, I mean, that was also a big turnaround for me, was going to a place. Yeah, I had not worked really any retail. I was working
Yeah,
at
we worked
Target at the
at
same time.
churches, so
Yeah, yeah. So it's just like where mistakes are super welcome, and
right, right.
uh, or at least they should be. But um, and the fact that you had the CEO of Starbucks, you know, sending these videos saying, if you make a mistake, I, as the CEO, if I was standing over your shoulder, would way rather you say, hey, I made a mistake. Let me right that wrong. Let me remake the drink so that you get what you wanted. And he goes, if they get super ticked, I would way rather them get really mad but have a good drink than be really mad and have a bad drink. And I just was like, remember thinking, what? Why is that such a big deal to me? But it just was. It just like it changed my whole mentality on people. That it was, and then that I think that was the beginning of, yeah, you make a drink wrong, someone's gonna get ticked, and that's fine. And you do then what you know is the right thing to do in that moment. To quote Frozen 2, which my 5-year-old loves
Yes,
so much, although I do too.
it's pretty
Um,
good.
just do the next right thing.
Right.
And knowing what that is, you make the drink, you put it up there. Sure, maybe you take a little licking, but because Starbucks is what Starbucks is, that person's like 10 people back in your memory at that point, within a minute, because you've had to make so many other drinks. And then you've got someone like Dawn who drives through the drive-through and is happy no matter what you do. So then you've
Right.
got those people too, where you're like, I accidentally spit in your drink. It's cool. I love it. It tastes great. So,
Oh man, is that the triple venti white mocha?
oh
Is
yeah,
that her?
yeah,
That's so ridiculous that I remember that.
I know.
Well, is that when the CEO all gave us a copy of our own book?
Yes, yeah. I
Onward.
think yeah. Onward. Yeah.
I would see Connor's music shows, and when he would recognize that I was like there, he'd be like, "Onward!" Like he would just.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we also worked at Starbucks during the whole Scott Walker
Oh
being
yeah.
governor and some of the fun stuff there. Yeah, it is interesting looking back on those time. Like, do you feel like that period and the overlap that we had, it was like you were trying to like figure out who Josh Cleveland was, like all over again.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, at least for me, I just had these moments where I was like, oh, like I do like myself. Like I have a lot of good memories here.
Yeah.
And then it allowed me to like go and be somewhere else, but
Yeah.
also like still be me
Yeah.
that I had like lost. And
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's something very symbolic about coming home, right?
sure,
For
yeah, yeah,
as depressing as it is, as an adult to move back home,
yeah,
um,
I
there's
get it.
also there's magic in it. There's a sense of you see so many different narratives, whether in book or a movie form, that's when the main character sort of they remember something from their past that's formative, or the scales drop from their eyes, or whatever that is. And I feel the exact same way. I feel like it was a sense of rediscovery. And there's so many reasons why, looking back, that I was happy that I had that time. One, like I needed it. Like I left after being there for a year, and it was too soon, and I ended up moving back. um but it was like glorious. But then, looking back in retrospect, also, those 3 years that I was there were like of the last like four of my dad's life. Like
Yeah,
I wouldn't trade that for anything.
right.
To have that time, to be that close, to see my dad as an adult person, um, like I hadn't seen him before, or recognized him before. And I don't know if you saw your parents in the same way. My mom was always my mom. She's never a real human. But my dad, she's going to listen and be like, I'm calling him up right now. Maybe don't post this. But there was one bit of sacrifice that I always have to take inventory of and always have to give homage to. And that was, while I was there getting myself right, I had a daughter who lived over here in Minneapolis. And so this there was sacrifice there that was made too. But it's just kind of like, I wouldn't I still wouldn't change it, as tough as that was
Yeah,
to be away from her. I had to do it, and it put a lot of stress on her mom, because she was a single mom raising this kid. And I would come in, like on some weekends and stuff, and um, be the fun parent. But the other part of the narrative too that I always have to mention is that I can't express the thankfulness that I have in God because of how well Harper did through all of that. And sure, she still has um, issues, as any human does.
yeah,
Um, but gosh, like, for all the crap that her mom and I put her through, to have her be the person that she is, I'm like, God surrounded that child with love of grandparents and aunts and uncles and people all over the place that just refuse to let her be anything but who she is, and like help her be on that path. So like it really was tough to not be around, but also I thank God for the time that I had with my dad, and also the time that I grew as a person, but also the time that God grew my little girl into an amazing human being
Yeah.
as well. Like there's just all that in there.
Yeah, there's like pros and cons to everything. I mean, that's when I look back on the 2 years or so. I think that I was back in Oshkosh. I think that I did really look back and like it was good to have that hour or that hour to have that year with to to see Gary more, and then to I was there when my mom was going through chemo. That was that
Mhm.
same year, and then my family and my dad was going through a lot, and I got to be there for some of that. I was in like a great place, but I guess I was glad that I was there. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is tough to look at some of the sacrifices. Like, oh man, this this made this. For me, it was like going to it. I went from like part time or full time school to part time school, and like then I ended up spending forever to finish school. But I don't know, such a minor thing. I was gonna ask you, since we're talking about Gary, is like if you remember much about his memorial service, because I like am pretty much blank. Like I was
Yeah.
there, but I was a mess.
Yeah. I
I
don't think we had one, did we? Was that a thing? Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. Somewhere, um, it's recorded somewhere.
I know. Have
Just
you
the,
ever watched it?
no,
Yeah, me either.
no.
I think Pat
I
Curl recorded it.
Yeah, I remember snippets of it, and there are things that some of them that I hold sacred, and some of them I'm like, why do I remember that? Like I remember going up when I wasn't supposed to, like that just sticks in my brain. And then my brother, like I stood up at the podium, and then both Matt and Nate were like, no, 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 not yet. I was like, good, I'm gonna go sit down now. Um, I remember, I don't remember what I said, but I remember being well prepared, and I was like proud of what I said. I also remember a little bit of what Matt and Nate said, and I remember thinking like that's it. Like what they shared, it was so great to see and hear how my brother saw my dad, and we talked about the same person, and we each hit these different facets, and I can't remember for the life of me what any of us said.
Yeah, no, I have no clue. So I just it. Did you like? I just remember like the pain that I felt. Like it did not feel like real. Like
Yeah.
it like couldn't be.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
think there was definitely that piece. um I think part of it, and maybe this is the same for you, I'm not sure, but just being in the Oak Haven church building
yeah,
where we like grew up.
right.
Like I don't remember really having many funeral services in that building. I mean, there's
I
like a
mean
like a
Jimmy's for sure,
yeah, there's Jimmy's. Um,
but yeah, I guess maybe
didn't we
that's.
do some sort of celebration for your grandpa? I can't remember if we did or not, or maybe it was just more of a.
I don't
But
think so.
I don't remember many
No,
of
you're
that type
right.
of thing. So I think most of my memories of that church is just us being together. I do distinctly remember having the thought of the one of the important things for me of that day was I wanted everyone at Oak Haven to know that they were going to be just fine.
Okay, yeah, I
Like,
feel like that was said
yeah,
quite a bit.
and I feel like there was something about it, just that sense of, the, cliche closing of one chapter and the beginning of another one of a new one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember seeing Harper cry,
Mhm.
um, which I wasn't sure if she was going to or not, just with her relationship with my dad. And I remember just feeling, and this may have been after the fact once my wife and I were talking about it, but Katie was just like, gosh, it was just that was kind of like the final word and the final say that I'm not going to get to really know who your dad was. Um,
Hmm.
which that was a sad thing to think of like, oh, she just doesn't. And when Tully was born too, to be like, this is a kid who honestly looks a lot like my dad, especially when she was a baby, which was a little disconcerting when you're holding this little being and then you see your dad's face look up at you and be like, I'm pooping right
That'd be
now.
weird.
Yeah. And it's like, or when especially when she'd cry and look angry, I was like, oh, I just like put her back out in the bassinet and be like, sorry, dad. Uh, like it's a little freaky, but just that, he didn't get to meet her and those sorts of things. But yeah, thinking about again, the service itself, there's not a lot that solidified in there.
Did you know? I don't want to spend like forever on the service aspect of it, but did you know like he was gonna end it with like this slideshow of him disappearing off the screen?
Yeah, I made it.
So
Um
okay, so I guess you did know.
I made it, but my mom, like little rascal, I made it because she told me to, because
Right,
when they were at that was like at this on this hill at this like monastery or nunnery or somewhere in Rochester by the Mayo Clinic.
right.
They took those pictures with that intent.
Yeah, no, I knew that because somebody told me that.
Yeah, and I like when my mom was like, "Hey, so we need to do this thing, and I want you to put some of your music behind it." I was like, "What are you talking about?" She just showed me like, "Well, your dad and I took these pictures pretty much with this in mind." And I was like, "I hate you." Because it's
Yeah,
just
how
like,
does one come up with that?
I don't know. And I think, my dad had a flair for the dramatic. I don't think he was trying to be dramatic about it, of like, and now I'll go off into the grand
What
yonder.
do you think? I mean, how would he not be? I don't
But
understand. I
at the
mean,
same time, I think it was also that sense of just the world is still here
mhm.
and I'm not. So keep moving, like
Yeah,
kind of keep walking, and I think that's why my mom wanted me to put that quote in there of like the main
the
thing
main
is to
thing.
keep the main thing,
Yeah, yeah.
and that none of us are the main thing,
Right,
you know. But
right.
still, I was like, when my mom showed me, I was like, this is a little heavy handed, mom.
So okay, but you're saying like as you're making it, it kind of hits you,
Yeah.
and you're like, whoa. So you kind of have the same,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
similar experience
I
as I
didn't really,
did.
yeah. And I didn't really cry during the service um, until that played.
Yeah. Ugh.
And I like walked from wherever I was. I must have been up front. And then I think maybe mom said something else. And instead of going to sit back down with my family, I needed to move. And Todd Truitt was the one that was hitting play on that video.
Okay.
And so he hit play on that video and I heard the music and I just like walked into the little office and gave Todd a hug, and then I just like broke down a little bit because I knew what was going on behind me, and knowing too like how could a human being look at that and not not have a sense of joy, but also just this is it, this is real, and he's gone.
Yeah. Man, that day was just a mess because of how crowded everything was. Like
Oh yeah,
you couldn't. I was in all the way in the front right corner, like almost like by the door,
oh yeah,
the door to the baptistry. Like I was
yeah,
way up there, and then Matt Harwell was behind me, which was like he's taller than me, and it was
yeah,
just kind of like uncomfortable. But I was
yeah,
standing because there's no like it was basically standing room only.
yeah. Well, and I didn't
I
realize
could see
until
Stewart from like way, way, way across. And he
yeah,
said he would look at me to get like comfort, but then I'd be crying, so then he would like look somewhere else.
It's like, well, I can't look at Andy. Yeah.
Because I talked to him about
Yeah,
about
it's like,
this.
not looking at Andrew right now. That's not happening. Yeah, and I found out later too that there were people there that I never saw just because it was so crowded. There were
Oh yeah.
people like some of my friends from high school that my dad had coached, and for my
Mm,
brothers as well, were
sure.
kind of lined up on the stairs going down towards the
Okay.
kitchen, which I didn't even know they were there. I got a message from them later, and my brothers as well, from a couple people that just said like that was really beautiful service. We just felt like we should probably just not stick around. So sorry we didn't say anything, but it was even that, just knowing that there were a lot of good people that were there. I mean,
Oh
everyone that
yeah.
was there was great to have them there, but yeah, it was super crowded, and yeah, you just couldn't say something to everyone, right? But,
Mm.
um, but yeah, I've wondered about that as well, from the perspective of what do they remember from that, and
I feel like I was almost like mad. I was like, man, that was a little much.
yeah,
Like, come on now. Like, I understand what you're doing. Your artistic ability was super creative, but it's kind of brutal.
yeah,
Like,
no, it was definitely I told my mom, I was like, I don't I don't know if that's I mean, I think it's fine, but also like
yeah,
if you want people to cry that haven't already,
yeah, that's
or
what we
people
do.
that thought all their tears were gone and now they're going to realize they have more. It's like dry heaving tears is what I feel like that caused. But
Yeah, it was a very surreal experience. Uh,
yeah,
so yeah, I'm sure it is interesting. Just, I mean, yeah, I remember. Oh, hold up here.
yeah,
It's we're in the middle of the night. I think she was sleepwalking.
oh, that's the best. Your wife or your kid?
No, the kid, one of the
uh,
kids.
that would be great if it was your wife. I was like, bring her on, you need to record her.
Come on over.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Um. Well, yeah. Um. Well, I appreciate you taking time to do this.
yeah,
I don't know how much time you have, Josh. I don't want to.
no, that's right. No, I told Katie, I was like, hey, I'm doing this thing downstairs, and yeah, and man, sorry about I got my days all mixed up with this thing I'm doing for people in like LA is next Tuesday. So
Oh, so you're
totally,
good.
yeah, I'm totally good. So there's nothing.
Um. So I was gonna say, like, how how do you think you're like processing like of like grief and stuff went during that like time? Because I wonder about this a lot for myself, where it's like that I think was the most painful death of my life,
Sure.
and the friendship that I miss the most in my life. And then
Hmm.
I had like other things happen too that were, um, I worked, um, I had like other people die in pretty like extreme like car accidents and stuff
Hmm.
that I was just like, oh my gosh, like that's, I'm like, it's horrible. Like what happened, like people that, like a elder that I lived with at a church for a long time when I was working, and lived with him and his wife in like car accident and like gone. And then a friend from Starbucks who, um, was a person that I really like walked faith with, maybe almost like, oh man, like Josh, um, that we worked with, Josh Youngworth,
Oh yeah.
like almost somebody like I really had a close friendship. He died in a car accident, and so it's like I've gone through some stuff where I've lost somebody, and I know how I process that, and it's kind of similar.
Yeah.
But I was just curious how that journey has been for you, and yeah, just processing the grief. And like I feel like I'm did a lot of counseling that helped me a lot, and now it's 10 years ago, so or close to 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, there was everything leading up to it. Um, it was so sacred just to have, because we knew it was coming for a while. Um, I've said this a bunch to probably you as well, but like, I think as well as a person could die, my dad did that. He died really well, um, in such a way where a lot of people had a chance to say goodbye, um, in their own way. But there's definitely that sense of grief of just, and it would hit in weird times.
Mm.
Uh, like it was probably maybe a couple weeks after he had died. I was at home, and I think we just had like a record on or something like that, and I just uh, had my wife's iPad where all of our photos were, and I just all of the photos from our wedding were on there, so I was looking through those, and then it just kind of uploaded. I just then kind of went down the rabbit hole of like Google Photos, which had a lot more, and I was just going through these photos of my dad, and it just it hit me then, just like seeing those pictures. And I think seeing pictures of my dad healthy too, because the last few weeks, he was just, you know he was a good looking bald man, but it just wasn't the same, um and just seeing those, I think that hit, it was all good kind of cries and good grief. um but then, yeah, it's those little things where something as small as the Packers had either a really great game or a really, really poor game, when I could kind of hear what my dad's reaction would have been. But also, those were the times when I would have called and be like, "What'd you think of that?" Or like, "What about this?" Or, um, whatever. Uh, to like big moments of, "Hey, I'm going through this thing at work, and I need someone's other perspective on it," and I need a perspective that I know is going to tell me the truth on something, or like I have these thoughts or that. And there's that sense of grief of like, he was my go-to for a
Yeah,
lot of those things. And of course, like I mentioned before, um, when Tully was born,
yeah.
um, and we had a moment this Christmas. We ended up getting together in Madison with my side of the family, and um, Nate has been putting together and digitizing all of our old like VHS, like
Oh my
home
gosh.
movies and different things, and from like the ones that we made as kids that are just atrocious, and having our kids watch those is real interesting. Like, just, this is a short story, but so we made a movie. Well, I wasn't in it. This was like Nate and Matt and Rob Griswold made a movie called Crap, and it was all about Matt needing to drop a deuce but he was like severely constipated and couldn't do. And that's the whole movie is just him sitting on the potty.
Yeah.
He reads through all of Gone with the Wind, like, and then eventually they have like a Sylvester Stallone over the top moment where they're like holding hands, him and Rob Griswold, and they get it out. So the our kids watch this
Oh,
at
yeah.
some point, and like 30 years later, they made a sequel to it. So anyway, that's fun. But anyway, so my brother, Nate's been just putting all these onto a hard drive that we can have access to.
Yeah.
And so he's like, "Hey, I made one with as many Christmases as I could find," and they went back quite a long ways. And my dad loved the camera. He loved to hold the camera. He
Yeah.
loved to turn the camera on himself. He loved to film my mom's butt. Like he just loved the camera. And but Nate had put together just this little montage of these Christmases for probably a span of 10 or 11 years. And the last little scene is one that I don't remember seeing before, but it's my dad under the Christmas tree. He's got the camera facing him and he's doing something stupid. Like he's just
Hmm.
saying like, "Oh yeah, Santa brought me to my wife." I don't know. I don't think he was saying that, but something just weird.
Uh-huh.
But it was just like heart-wrenching
Mm,
to just
yeah.
be together as a family, and
Right.
but not, and those are all those holidays where we're just not not together.
Do you remember the this brochure of like dealing with Christmas that he wrote? Does he have any
Oh
memory
man,
of this?
I don't. I
So,
remember seeing a pamphlet once, but it was not written by him because it was atrocious, and he laughed at it a lot. It was when we were down south for one of the Christmases. But no,
so I'm pretty sure he wrote this whole thing. Um, and I still have it upstairs and I have like a digital copy of it and stuff. But it was all like processing. It was almost like processing like grief during Christmas, how like Christmas is not happy for everyone.
oh,
I'll try
oh,
to find it. I'll
if
try to
I
find
have,
it.
I had put it out of my memory.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
whatever
I
reason,
would love
it's
to see it.
something that I have kept on to because I just like resonated so much with it. So, um, but anyways, I don't know. I just feel like he was always kind of thinking about some stuff that maybe other people aren't thinking about. And then the church that I went to for a little bit here, they even did like a service during um, during Christmas that basically was the same thing that the brochure is doing, but almost like a
Mm,
service to like
yeah.
honor sadness and those that have gone before us
Oh
during
yeah.
Christmas time. And I think I read a part of it um, for that service. And yeah, I remember like one of my memories of him is my Stephanie was about to get married. My sister's about to get married, and like I go into his office, and he's like, "How does it feel for her to get married before you? Did you ever think that would happen?" And I was like, "No, but thanks for bringing it up." Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I am now.
So he just had a way of, I think, some wisdom of finding some things that he just knew what was going on somehow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he's very like intuitive. There
yeah,
was something that came to mind. This is totally off topic, but I mean, a
yeah,
memory
yeah,
of my dad.
right.
But you asked earlier about like if I ever remember him like saying anything about um, like any sort of like racial injustice or anything on that
Yeah, yeah,
kind of
yeah.
ilk. Right before I got married the first time, um, my my dad's mom called, and which she didn't do very often. But this was maybe I don't know, a couple weeks before we were gonna get married, and like she was known to fly off the handle from time to time, but she called and he was like, "Oh, hey, mom," and she just lit into him. Like I could hear it from across the room. I
Hmm.
couldn't hear what she was saying, but he was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" Whoa. And it turns out she had just sort of inferred, or like, oh, I think we had sent out our invitations and she had gotten it and just now had mustered up the courage or whatever to call my dad. And when she read it, she was convinced that Rachel was black, and she was just
Okay.
irate over the fact that not only that I was going to marry a black woman, but that my dad was allowing it to happen and was going to be a part of it. And he, so the first half of the conversation was him calming her down and saying like, she's not she's not black, she's white, like we've known their family for a long time, they've been, their whole family's like ministers to the state of Wisconsin and the north here, and she comes from a great family, and loves the Lord. And and there was part of me that was like, okay, he's kind of like, but then he went the step further and he was like, but I gotta tell you, Mom, even if she was, she's a good person, she loves the Lord, and it doesn't matter what she looks like. And I heard that part of the conversation, the
Yeah.
fact, and then she she went crazy again. She was like, "What?" And he was talking to him later. I was like, "How did the second half of that conversation go?" He's like, "Well, I probably shouldn't. I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere with it, but also I couldn't just not say anything. It bothered me that I was having the first part of the conversation in the first place. So I had to make sure that I had the second part of the conversation of, doesn't matter what she looks like or what her skin color is or whether she's black or white or any sort of color. Like, she loves our son and he loves her. She loves God, and that's pretty much it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which, and I'd forgotten about that, but I
Yeah.
remember that conversation and thinking like, of all the things, especially nowadays, and a lot of like my African American friends and people of color have encouraged me and other, white people
Yeah.
to like have those conversations with those family members or whatever, of like, hey, if
Right.
your cousin, your uncle, your parents or whatever say something that's a racist statement, like just call them on it,
Right.
and having that, I can't imagine like what that takes. I've had some strong conversations with my mom about stuff. Thankfully, I haven't had to talk to her about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I can't imagine having to talk to your mom from the deep south, from Birmingham, Alabama, like born and raised, and to just say, no, that's just not, that's not how life is. That's not how God made this life. That's not how God
Yeah.
made people. Um, so that was, yeah, that was a kind of a popped into my memory.
Yeah, that is interesting. Like it seemed like, I mean, obviously, like you still have moments where you like miss them, but it seems like you guys have like been an example. Like the Cleveland family has been an example of how to like grieve in a healthy way. Do you think that's accurate?
Yes and no. I mean, we've definitely had our. You can read through my mom's blog and see. I think there's been positives and negatives, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
or you can read the ones that you think are positive. Then give me a call and I'll tell you um, how positive it actually is. But yeah, I think so. I think we were fortunate too that, for better or for worse, we had a good amount of time to prepare. Like, once we knew that there was no more chemotherapy, there was no more medicine that was out there that was going to do anything to help my dad's body. We just got to this point where it was okay, like, and it was kind of just led by my dad mostly. I mean, he's the one who
Yeah,
led us through the grief and started
right.
us through. I think he sort of led by that example of, you know, okay, well, I can't do anything about death. I couldn't in the first place, but now it's coming sooner than any of us want. So how can I do this in such a way that doesn't get rid of the grief, but let's start having some of the grief now to where the death part isn't the shock. Like you mentioned about, the elder that you would live with, that all of a sudden it was just an
Yeah,
immediate, you know, they're there one day and then they're gone
yeah,
with no warning, no. anything. And I because I haven't dealt with that, I wonder if that would have been tougher. Like if my dad would have died of like a massive heart attack or something. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, it's it's tough. But I do feel like having that space really
Yeah. I
helped.
mean, he did like the celebration of life um, a week before. No, a month before. I can't
I think it
remember.
was like, yeah, it was probably like a month
A
or
month.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Um,
But it wasn't, yeah, really what it couldn't have been more than a month, I don't think.
yeah. I didn't get a chance to go to it. I wish I did. Um, but yeah, I think yeah. I mean, it's never something that I guess you do like. Well, I think you can do a bad job at it, but it's not
Yeah.
easy. It's not easy if you do a good job. It's
Yeah.
just I just wonder like I guess like your relationship with your with Matt and Nate with your brothers. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess my guess is it's really. I mean, it's hard to think like you guys could get stronger or closer. I've always seen you guys as pretty close, anyways. But I'm sure it's done something to that
Yeah,
too.
it's yeah, definitely. I think it's I think for a while there was definitely some time where I don't think we avoided each other. Um,
Hmm.
but there wasn't like, hey, let's make sure that we call each other every week or once a month. Um,
Okay.
but I think it made when we would call each other or reach out, it made it more intentional. Um, and I think just with not necessarily like the, hey, you never know what you have till it's gone sort of thing, but it was also more of a, hey, we just need to be there for each other because we're all going through life. And now we have something else that's just always going to be an undercurrent of we don't have dad anymore. And we also need to make sure that we're being good sons to our mom, who's still around too, and to not think, hey, the best of our life just died. It's just one half of the best is still here. Um, but yeah, I think in the moments when we're together, I think we've cut through some of the like, let's talk about the weather when we get together.
Right.
Like it's kind of more of like you just get right to it. My mom's always wanted to do that.
Yeah.
She's like, tell me about all the things that you're struggling with.
I
Um,
mean, she does that to me.
yeah. Oh yeah. Gosh. Yeah. No, if I were you, I would be like, I'm never calling Deb again. Because it's gonna be like
No, I
the
haven't called her. I haven't called her a lot, but I called her before. I think
yeah.
I called her when I got engaged.
Oh
So
sure. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
been a few. I mean, I didn't talk to her often, but I did call her before.
Yeah.
Before.
But yeah, I think there's definitely been those moments where we've just decided like, well, let's just if something real's going on, let's be real about it and don't beat around the bush um and try to just try to be there and be intentional about the way that we are there for one another. But I think for my mom, she's gone through fits and starts. I think, she's just when she seems to be doing well with the grief of like my dad, then her dad died, and he was like on his way out for a while with dementia and stuff like that. Um, and then her mom died just when she was starting to feel better about all that stuff, and that one I think sent her back a ways. Um,
It's harder seeing people you love grieve than going through
yeah,
it yourself.
yeah, yeah. I think for sure. I think that's part of even that, going back to that video that my mom wanted to make about my dad just walking off into the wild blue yonder.
Yeah.
Like part of me was like, Mom, they're like people are gonna cry partly for us. Like they're gonna hurt for themselves, but they're also gonna be like, oh my gosh, like the Clevelands. Oh, and it's not like
Hmm.
we were doing great, but also I was like, oh, that's gonna like up that ante a little bit. Like,
It's interesting. Like, I mean, yeah, obviously, like I hurt for you guys, but it's like you're just doing like we're not like I mean, we are selfish in some ways, but we're so individual. Like, it's
mhm.
really hard for me to experience your pain.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, I can kind of feel it, but I'm just you interpret so many things through your own eyes. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's definitely an interesting, and with grief, everyone goes through it in different ways. I think,
Yeah.
and like you said, I think you're exactly right. Like there's not a ton of ways to go through it bad, and I think the main way is like if you if you blame, like if you
Right.
find you go down that route of like blaming God, or blaming,
The doctors.
cancer, the disease, the doctors,
Yeah. Yeah.
or like even blaming, like, there's definitely a part of me that, like, I look at my dad and think, well, like the cancer, at least where it first manifested was in this whatever knob he had on his foot, which he was
Yeah.
aware of for quite a while
Yeah.
and didn't do anything about. So there's part of me that could have been like, Pop, why didn't you? I mean, once that thing sprouted an eye, you probably should have taken care of it. We called it our little brother, my brothers and I, at one point because it got so big. But we just were like,
Yeah. That
we
is
could
hard.
blame him for
That's
that, but
sure.
at the same time, it's like there's just no good to it. There's no,
Mm-mm. It's
it
not
doesn't take,
helpful.
yeah, it doesn't, it makes it worse, you know, to think like, oh, maybe something could have been done.
And I think there's a difference. Like you can acknowledge that, but um, man, I did not plan on this. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
So like I think it's important to like acknowledge like, oh, I could blame this,
Yeah.
but it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
helpful to blame, but it's helpful to maybe be like, yeah, this is part of my grief is this acknowledgement. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think we've all kind of come to that in one way, shape, or form in our family of there's things to blame, but there's no good in it. There's no good to it. And I think
yeah,
my mom has been able to, she's kind of led us a lot in that too. Um, and just kind of followed some of her lead and some of that.
well, I think maybe I'll close by just saying, like, like, I'm assuming music has just been this healing thing throughout all your life with whatever you're going through. But has mute like what where are you at with kind of like your music these days? How are you feel? Because I mean, everybody on my podcast hears your music every single week,
Yeah.
and I've changed like the intro a few times here or there, and I try to like edit stuff where you've already edited because I used to try to like figure out, oh, I'm gonna stop it here, and then
Oh,
I'm like,
sure.
wait, like Josh ended all these songs at some point. Why don't I just use the ending that he already had? So I'll delete everything until like the ending of your song, and then use
Oh,
that
yeah.
to cut into my segment. So
Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah.
that's been
No,
my cheat code. But
no,
yeah, I'm
it's been
curious where
cool.
your music is at and like what I know you're playing a lot still, and yeah, just tell us about that.
Yeah. I think, yeah, music it's always been something that, uh, I've gravitated towards for whether it's therapy or a sense of, connection to things that I can't control, or even with a song that I wrote specifically for my dad, "The Lost in Your Arms." Like I wrote that because I was out of control. There was no, I couldn't be when he first was diagnosed with cancer. I couldn't be there, and we were hundreds of miles away from each other. And so the only thing I could do was just connect to the one thing I had, which was music. And I ended up writing this song relatively quick succession. And it was just my grasping out to hold on to something that if I couldn't actually hug my dad, I could write a song about it, about being, just enveloped in that type of embrace. And also realizing that that's something that other people can relate to. Like oddly enough, with that song, I've played that song at countless weddings, um, which is just
That makes
for me,
sense.
it's such a cool thing to have a song that I wrote out of a longing, to have like this different life. Um, when I wrote it more about maybe the end of a journey,
Yeah.
uh, these people are using it for the beginning, and there's something really beautiful to me about that. With it, not just my songs, but just music in general. The fact that something can be written and kind of in the eye of the beholder, they say like, "Yeah, you may have written it for this, but it means this to me," which I really like. Which is what keeps me writing songs. Is I will never be mad if someone says like, "Oh, this song that you wrote is totally about this," and if they're like way wrong, I'll never correct them because I'm like, "That's awesome, cool."
Yeah.
I'm glad that that's what that means to you. And so, yeah, music has definitely been that for me. Um, and it's yeah, I've been playing more and more, writing more and more. The pandemic has definitely opened up because we can't go out and play as much. It's just let's write some stuff, and I've been doing more co-writes with the guys in the band, and that's been just super fun too for perspective wise to start something, to write something, and then hand it off to them and say, "What would you do with this?" Or vice versa. They're like, "Hey, I wrote this part. Uh, your turn. Like tag, you're in." Um, kind of thing. So we've got some new stuff that's recorded that we're gonna start releasing here, and hopefully a couple months do a song a month for a while, releasing some new stuff um and just yeah. I mean, to me, music is all about connection. It's about finding that intersection between writer and listener, and if I can keep creating those intersections, or at least pathways to those intersections, then I mean, I'll write until I can't do it anymore, because it's just, even if you know no one uh like hears it and thinks, "Oh, that's a hit song," but someone will hear it and be like, "This means something to me," then that makes it worth it to do. Of course, they'll always love to like have someone hear it and be like, "You know what? This is $1 million song." Like that's, I won't shy away from that. Um, but that's not the reason why I do it. I love just love playing. I love being able to connect. And for me too, it's just as I learn more about the instruments that I'm playing, it's easier to it's just so fun to get lost in the instrumentation and just to play something, and just how music can emote and connect um with something. Like I always think I was watching Finding Nemo with Harper when she was like 3,
Hmm.
and I hadn't seen the movie, because when you have kids, you don't like go to movies all the time unless you have one of those passes. Then you go as soon as they
Yeah,
go to
all the
school.
time.
I would do that anytime I had the opportunity. But I wouldn't go see a kids movie. So,
Right.
um, but I was Finding Nemo, and it was just the opening montage, like after the like I don't know if kids listen to your podcast, but after the Barracuda kills the thing. But it's just the opening music, and there's just one progression that I like bawled my eyes out.
Hmm.
And Harper's like watching this movie, just like like fish, and I'm like, yeah, fish. Okay, like just like moved just by the music. There's
Yeah.
no words to it, but I try to find ways to do that, whether it's with the instrumentation itself. It helps having really talented musicians that I'm playing with now that can do that with the music, and I'll try to do that with the lyric and vocals. But yeah, it's I I uh I enjoy it. We've got new stuff coming out hopefully soon, and I'm trying to put more out online too, of just playing songs that I really enjoy playing, whether they're mine or other people's. So right now I'm kind of on a kick. I've got a few sort of in the can, as it were, of songs that I've just really liked from artists that have meant a lot to me. So just trying to be more consistent about just publishing those as I go, and just me here in my basement playing music, um, which has been fun.
Yeah, it's fun though. So it's Josh Cleveland Music on Instagram and Facebook,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, I know like way back to Mole
Yeah.
with the fat kid on the bike, which we can't sing that song anymore. But
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but Yeah, seeing you play at Tippler
Oh my
when
gosh,
I
yeah.
was in I don't know, I guess high school. And
Yeah.
then, through like the song you wrote for Jimmy that we talked about
Hmm.
Jimmy's funeral. I think
Yeah.
you played it, or maybe Christian played it
I think
at the
Christian
feet.
played it.
Christian played it.
Yeah, and I
And
bawled my
then
eyes out. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then yeah, just seeing the newest music that you've done, and I don't know, I really enjoy it. I listen to your music pretty often. I know we don't talk that much, but it's like
Oh,
I still listen to your music quite a bit. So that's really fun for me.
yeah.
It's a good connection, and I enjoy it. And then I was thinking about when um, I went with, I guess I met Josh Jackson, and maybe I met you there. We rode together to see you play at a coffee shop in Madison. And I
Oh
think there
yeah.
was only four of us there.
Mm-hmm.
And you played, and the Truitts were there. And we went to get a burger. And
Yeah.
I really was hungry. So I wanted, a third pound instead,
Yeah.
instead of the half pound. And
Yeah.
so it's so fun to like, the music also brings like a lot of joy and a lot of laughter, even if it's like a serious song, just
Oh
because
yeah.
I'll remember some stupid memory about you
Oh yeah.
guys, you guys getting arrested, making a video of a
Yeah.
break-in,
Yeah.
or I'm pretty sure you're the first person that ever showed me the movie Mortal Kombat,
Oh
when
yeah.
when you were babysitting me, I think,
That's right.
which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Um,
Of all the
or
things, let's
jumping the
watch
fence.
Mortal Kombat. Yeah.
Yeah, jumping the fence to go to your house if our soccer game got rained out at Congress Field.
Oh yeah.
Just so many like funny, obviously like million memories, but it's just fun to think about like where life takes people. So yeah, we've known each other
Yeah.
a long time,
Yeah.
and
Long time.
outside of, I guess, Stuart, I haven't been able to like talk to people that I've known like forever. So it's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
No, it's super cool. And yeah, I appreciate one, it's taking the time, but also the fact that you listen to the music is cool. And yeah, it's just nice too to have someone that you've known for a really long time that you can you shared a lot of different stories in life and whatnot too. I mean, it was I forget, it was I think for Gavin's wedding,
Yeah,
like
you played
down
for Gavin's wedding. Yeah,
like driving down with Josh Jackson. I think because I met Josh at that show you were talking about.
that's the
Um,
first time you met him.
I met him. Well, one of the times he came out to Tuvalu, either with you or maybe he came out. Um,
I think he came with Lance.
he came with Lance. That's right.
Yeah,
And
that's
we
right.
we just sort of met, and then it was like 2 weeks later we were driving together down to Arkansas from Wisconsin. Just like cool. We don't really know each other, but we've got a long time to fall in love. But then like meeting you down there and it was like this weird like worlds colliding of
Mhm.
like there's people that I had heard of but had never really met or like went to camp with once for a year, and then there was you that was like, well, I know Andrew, so at
Right,
least I feel safe because we've known each other, you know, like since birth,
right.
or close anyway. So it's